West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Well, Democrats and everyone else who cares about democracy are breathing a huge sigh of relief after every single election-denying candidate who would have power over elections in a swing state lost, or in Kari Lake's case, is pretty much on her way to losing their elections, which is good news for 2024, given that Trump or whichever Republican won't be able to steal the election by having Republican states ignore the votes and just hand the Electoral College over. But the threat to democracy isn't over, friends. The Republican Party is still an extremist party. As The Atlantic's Ron Brownstein points out, while in Democratic-leaning and swing states, voters last week delivered an unmistakable cry of resistance to the restrictive Republican social agenda, in red states, where Republicans have actually imposed that agenda over the past 2 years, Republican governors cruised to re-election without any discernible backlash. Just look at states like Texas and Florida. But the new media meme that replaces the old inflation and crime media meme, have you noticed that nobody's talking about those things anymore? Is that after the supposed red wave turned into a red wedding, infighting Republicans will now shift away from MAGA extremism and find their way to the safe ideological middle. I mean, over the past week, there's been a growing number of Republicans distancing themselves from Donald Trump. But is that really a change? Or just a change back? Once Trump-friendly Congressman Mo Brooks said it would be a bad mistake to nominate Trump as the party's 2024 presidential nominee, calling him, quote, dishonest, disloyal, incompetent, and crude. But Brooks's origin isn't the center. It's the Tea Party. And if Republicans do dump Trump and his MAGA cronies, which, keep in mind, would come only after losing 3 consecutive elections, plus a Georgia runoff, 2 impeachments, and an armed insurrection to try to overthrow the government, the alternative is shaping up to be Ron DeSantis, whose priorities as Florida governor include going after Mickey Mouse, teachers, and drag brunches and yelling at school kids because they're wearing masks to prevent COVID. And oh, did I mention he started out as a member of, say it with me, the Tea Party. And with Trump supposedly gearing up to announce another run for president tomorrow, it's abundantly clear that even if some Beltway Republicans want him to go away, there is a very high chance that Trump won't listen, as this weekend's Saturday Night Live depicted perfectly.
Don't you need to, walk your daughter down the aisle?
Missed it. Anyway, what are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about? You see Fablemans?
Mr. President, I don't know how to tell you this, but we've moved on. We can't have you on the show anymore.
What? What did I do?
It's because you lost. Mr. President, we just don't see a future with you. But you know what? We can still be friends, okay? So bye-bye now.
Wait. I have a big announcement, November 15th. Hey, don't push me off. I have a big announcement, and it's not what you think.
Joining me now is Michelle Goldberg, New York Times columnist and MSNBC political analyst, and Matthew Dowd, political strategist and founder of Country Over Party. And, you know, Matt, I want to start with you on this because I feel like the biggest unrecognized fact in media coverage over the past probably decade has been not realizing that the Tea Party was already extreme. It was an extremist movement against President Obama, backed by people like the Koch brothers. And it is now the basis of the party and the base of the MAGA movement. Let me just go through it. Current senators who are Tea Party: Cruz, Rubio, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, who wants to get rid of Social Security, Tim Scott. Now, Johnson also wants to get rid of Social Security. Congressmen who were Tea Party and then became MAGA and wanted to overthrow the election: Louis Gohmert, Matt Gaetz, Mo Brooks. Steve Scalise is in leadership. He was a Tea Partier. Jim Jordan. That doesn't even include Ron DeSantis, who was governor, Tea Party. Jeff Sessions, Mick Mulvaney, who joined the Trump cabinet. Mark Meadows. I could go on. And let me just show y'all, remind you what the Tea Party was. Here are their protests. This is what they looked like. Can we just show this? This is cut 5 for my point. There. This is the Tea Party movement. This was pre-MAGA. You see them? And now here they are protesting against Obamacare. Now, that was 10 years before the insurrection when they just came back and just busted in the building. So the idea that they're somehow going to moderate instead of just pivot right back to that, which is what Ron DeSantis is, it mystifies me that anyone believes it. Your thoughts?
Well, this is why I said this, and I don't know if you remember, I said in September of 2015, that Donald Trump would be the Republican nominee of the party. Not that I had some great insight into this, but I did know what the Republican Party had become. And Donald Trump didn't change the Republican Party. Donald Trump didn't change it. He revealed it. He revealed it for who they are. And that's the problem they have. Just pushing Donald Trump off the stage is not going to even come close to solving the problem, because this is who they are. They are now, the villagers who carried the torches are now in charge of the village. And so the Republicans have allowed this to happen. And so they've allowed all the barriers to be knocked down, have no guardrails, have nothing. And their problem is fundamentally now not with Donald Trump, in my view, though he's a proximate problem for them. The problem is their base, because their base is completely out of sync with the sort of mainstream of America. That's the problem. And until they start speaking truth to their base, until they start saying, no, we don't believe any of that, that's not true, we shouldn't do that, this problem is fundamentally not going to be solved, because the Republican Party existed before Donald Trump, and it's going to exist after Donald Trump. This is who they are.
And Michelle, I mean, you can go back to the Pew Research and Public Religion Research Institute, all their data. People who were with the Tea Party were fundamentally motivated by fear of demographic change, anger toward groups like Muslims, anger toward women, anger a lot toward blacks and black people voting. It was the same drivers that made MAGAism. And then everyone was like shocked. Oh, my God, the Republicans like Trump? Yeah, because he expressed anger at all of those exact same groups. Now you have Tea Partiers like Matt Gaetz and Ted Cruz saying, we don't want Mitch McConnell to be the leader of the party in the Senate anymore, and we don't want Kevin McCarthy, who are non-Tea Partiers. Like, they want to go to like Jim Jordan. They want to go back to the Tea Party people, right? That's the change.
I think that there are both, with Donald Trump, there's both kind of continuities with what the Republican Party was before him and certain radical breaks. I mean, I wrote a book that came out in 2006. The subtitle was The Rise of Christian Nationalism. So I've obviously been concerned about the far right of the Republican Party for quite some time. At the same time, I do think that there are things that are particularly sinister about Donald Trump. I mean, I think that there is a level of shamelessness and chaos and sort of blatant criminality that is distinct. I mean, it's been interesting to see how many of the election deniers, Carrie Lake aside, how many of the election deniers who have run for various offices have sort of not had the audacity that Trump had to try to stir up a mob against their own losses. There's a very specific sort of sociopathy that I think that Trump has. But I also don't think that the alternatives to Trump are going to be more ideologically moderate. They will, I think, be a little bit more orderly.
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, look, Trump took MAGA and gave it a king. And tied it to a very right-wing mean Jesus. He just took it and just added the Christian nationalism to it. He didn't innovate anything. I'm sorry, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say what I wanted to say is what's amazing, and I agree with what Michelle just said. Well, what's amazing, though, is yes, Donald Trump did those things, but what happened is the Republican Party said, that's fine by us. Right?
Yes.
It went from Donald Trump did all these sort of things that are anti-norms, but now the Republican Party has said that's fine. What I think it's revealed, what I think it's going to show is people have to look at Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake acts the most like Donald Trump of all the candidates. And what you saw was there's not some issue lineup. There's not a whole degree of issues they all agree on other than the fact they don't like democracy. They all seem to agree on that. They don't like democracy, a full-failed democracy. What they do all is act in this mean, indecent, coarse format. And because they've realized they can do that and stir up the Republican base in the course of this. So if we get past Donald Trump and the Republican Party as the nominee, it's going to be a mean, coarse, indecent person because that's what's now become acceptable.
It's the reason they like DeSantis, Michelle. They only like him because of how mean he is. He's a little guy. He's a little diminutive guy. He's like a little mean guy, right? And the reality is the only thing we're missing from this, what you both have put together, is that at the top of the Tea Party were the super rich elite. It was the Koch brothers. It was the Mercers. That's who was funding it because they want the mean as bread and circuses for working class white folks so that they can get the only thing they care about, the precious. Tax up for the rich. They don't want to pay taxes. They don't want Social Security. They want to get rid of Medicare because they don't want to pay bloody taxes. And sometimes when they're honest, like Mike Lee, they just say it, and their voters vote for them again. Ron Johnson and Mike Lee said, we're getting rid of your Social Security. And they're like, yeah, but the blacks can't vote, right? They're like, we got it, we're good. It's like there's no cruelty that their voters won't take because it's demographic panic that's pushing it. I don't know how else to say it.
But I do think that one thing that might have changed with this midterms is that the midterms have demonstrated that there is a price for that sort of naked cruelty. For the last 5 years, there's just been impunity for it. And one of the reasons that Donald Trump sort of stroked all the erogenous zones of the right is because he gave them permission to act on their basest impulses and said there would be impunity. Now we've seen a lot of consequences, for the party that cackled at the assault on Nancy Pelosi's husband. We've seen consequences for the party that's been kind of indifferent to the plight of 10-year-old rape victims. And I think that might lead to, if not a change of heart, at least a sort of level of hypocrisy that acknowledges that there's some things you shouldn't say out loud.
It is Tuesday, the 15th of November of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Okay, got that out of the way. How are you? Looks like we have control of the Senate, though the House is slipping through our fingers as these districts in California, MAGA country, come into play. And do you notice that we aren't, saying that all those votes are fake? Stop the count. Just don't count those votes and everything will be fine. Let's put our people in. No, we follow the rules, and it's usually to our detriment because that's what you do. You follow the rules, even if it's to your detriment. I think it's called a social contract. And who were those that would say F you to your social contract? Yeah. Maggots. And that's actually an insult to the actual maggots who perform a needed and necessary function in life. All of life. They do. But these maggots, you might call them bloodsuckers. You might. Because every time they come out with some sort of charge of like, oh, those people over there, look at them, they're a bunch of dictators. What? We're a bunch of dictators? What, we voted? Okay. Yeah, that's it. I suppose, to the MAGA Republican, anything that goes against their will is, well, absolutely evil. Listen to them, even now. And I should make note from the clip up top with Joy Reid that when the maggots first hit the scene, we all here at Netroots Radio commented on, wow, is this another one of these like AstroTurf things that are going on? Because it sure looks like the Tea Party, which was total AstroTurf. Yeah, boy, those what we now can call, with not only sincerity but fact, the fascist industrialists like the Koch brothers, the Petersons, etc., 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 when they created the monster of the Tea Party, they had no idea how much more of a monster it would get. You know, the kind with molecular acid, like in Alien. Yeah. With the file cabinet jaw. What's up with that? Yeah. Anyway. What are we going to do? Because now they being the MAGA Republicans, have the committees. Now, I know there's 17, I think that's the count right now, 17 uncalled races that are, I think, mostly, if not all, in California. And unfortunately, they are mostly in maggot country. How and you wonder, well, how can people in California vote the way they do? Because it's like any state. Okay? There's some people that just cannot stand city life because of all it has to offer. Oh, I can't take that. Oh, we moved here and carry a gun because of graffiti in San Jose. What? Are you kidding me? Talk about a bunch of snowflakes. Bunch of cowards. And they strut around like, I'm a big hero. Look at my gun. And they present it in public view for everyone to see. That's what public view is. Look what a big man I am. Yeah, diminutive. But you got a gun. Anyway, California is like any place. And how else do you explain someone like Devin Nunes, who really didn't even live in the district, and the family farm had moved to the Midwest almost 2 decades previous to him even taking office? And no one called it carpetbagging for some reason. Isn't this guy a carpetbagger? Oh, well, he lived here. Yeah, so what? But he sure played up. Oh, yeah, you know, we know all about this district because I'm a dairy farmer. Yeah, in Kansas or wherever. Jesus. Running in California. How else do you get somebody like Mike McCarthy? I mean, come on. Talk about a stilted presentational style. Gee. You know, these, I thought they were supposed to take acting classes when they were being, you know, run up the farm clubs of the right wing. You know, they do get identified and recruited, sometimes before they even get out of university. So they can start doing the work then. Yeah, and we don't ever do it on our side as much. I mean, show me one president of the Antifa Club on any campus anywhere in the world. You'll find Turning Point USA, even Stormtrooper Autumnwassen. Yeah. We got the Goose Stepper Club over here. We listen to a lot of Wagner. Oh, that's good. Don't fight. No, that's what we do. Okay. Academic freedom for you. Yeah, so much academic freedom we let the Autumnwassen get on campus and pretend that they are scholarly academics. Well, now look where we are. So, yes, Netroots Radio and the progressive movement in general. recognize that the maggots were very much the Tea Party, and that was the Republican Party. That's what they became. These Burgermeister, fascist industrialists, let's just call it what it is, created a little monster, they thought, that grew out of their control. And now it's morphed into molecular acid for blood monsters with file cabinet mouths coming out of your gut as babies, and then they grow bigger with all that they consume. Every time they consume something, they get bigger. All right. Well, enough of that comparison between real life and cinema. But as you learn in life, cinema will answer most every, if not all, questions that you have about life. Everything has been answered in cinema. Everything. It's almost like saying all the plots have been written too. But hey, they have. Now we just tweak it to make it our own. Alrighty. Well, what else? So we lose the House. They get all those committee chairmanships. We're gonna. I just read that they suddenly found a second Hunter Biden laptop. Really? What was it at somebody else's computer shop in, I don't know, Timbuktu, someplace in America, Timbuktu? That's what they call it. Timbuktu, someplace in America, Timbuktu, Iowa. With a blind computer repairman. How do they come up with this stuff? And we're going to be getting hearings about Hunter Biden's laptops and how he is the most corrupt individual, and the Biden family, the most corrupt family ever in the history of politics. Forgetting about Trump. Oh, yeah, we have some sort of Trump derangement syndrome. We just hate Trump. We don't just hate Trump, okay? I mean, come on. We're progressive liberals, and we can hold a lot of things, in our mind at the same time. All right? I think it's called nuance. I think. So, yeah, we don't just hate Trump. Some of us, I don't know, put up with Soros. Because for all of the stuff that they say Soros is guilty of, I wish that he would kick some money to a lot more people, because I'm not seeing it. Well, what do you expect from a bunch of people who are probably drinking the blood of babies and eating them too? Every time you turn around, there's another MAGA Republican getting thrown in jail for, grooming kids for sex. And you go, wait a second. Isn't that why they keep calling us? Yep, they're doing it. And you look at somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who tweeted something about... Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's this Bridget something. I can't remember. It'll come to me. She's the one that tweeted, because of our wins, it is now America versus communism. Yeah. And I got to tell you, you got to be a pretty hardcore Nazi to think America is commie. Because... I think really what it is, it's America against the goose-stepping maggot Nazis. Because that's what we're up against. And there's not very many of them, but they got a lot of guns. And I will say, there's not many of them in terms of percentages, but in terms of raw numbers, they can pretty much amass quite an army if they have to. I know not all of them are physically capable of being able to, crawl around on the ground. But they still got guns. And apparently they have a lot of law enforcement on their side. And apparently they have a lot of military on their side too. How is it that Michael Flynn, for all of his treachery and treasonous and seditious behavior, is able to make money giving speeches about the overthrow of the United States of America? I don't understand how that is. When you think about Fred Hampton getting killed in bed, and he wasn't even talking about the overthrow of America, but just, can we vote? Jesus H, you know what? Seems like there's an inequity there. Seems. Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Of those 17 and probably less outstanding districts that need to be decided, I'm hoping that their majority isn't by more than a few. Because we can muck up the works if we want. Will we? Marjorie Taylor Greene being a committee head. My God. Jeez, we got the wrestling guy. We got him back. Even that traitor Ron Johnson coming out. This is the guy that partied with Vlad on the 4th of July after Trump was installed as president, accusing Joe Biden of being compromised by China. Which I gotta tell you, every accusation is a confession. And we know, because we have nuanced brains, it's not only Russia that these MAGA Republicans are dancing a little Russian knife dance or sword dance to. But we already know about the collusion that they've been engendering with China. I mean, how else does Ivanka get all those patents in China? But it's Hunter Biden who is going to destroy America because of his abject corruption. Every accusation is a confession. That's why they're going after Hunter Biden. So we have to put up with it for another 2 years? Is that what we have to do? How about, I don't know, we need to put some teeth in the law that says if you have taken part in a violent insurrection against the United States of America, you cannot run for office. Because that's exactly what we have now. People who were not put in jail for that, not prevented from running for office, who are now in office or about to take their place in the chamber so they can destroy it from within. You know, the Nazis didn't do everything by just breaking Jewish shop windows and hauling off a bunch of people out of their houses, taking their fortunes. No. They were right inside the Reichstag. All right. I'm preaching to the choir. You know all of this. Anyway, why don't we... Oh, my gosh, look at the time. Why don't we get into what we have in store for you in the rest of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. As we begin here in the Bistro Cafe, well, the last suspect has been sentenced in a California truck driving licensing scandal that put hundreds of unqualified big rig drivers on the nation's highways. I have a dog that's making noise. Former Los Angeles Dodger Yasiel Puig will plead guilty to lying to the feds about a sports gambling ring. And officials from 6 nations spent more than $750,000 at Trump's D.C. hotel as they were trying to influence his administration. Not Hunter Biden. Okay. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the European Union warned Serbia and Kosovo against returning to their violent past. And the United Nations General Assembly approved a resolution calling for Russia to be held accountable for violating international law, including paying reparations to Ukraine. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. You know that at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, we have a chat room link, and Kelly Lincoln is monitor of that, so thank you, Kelly. And you also know that across from that chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site so that you can help us pay our bills. And thank you to those of you who are helping us pay our bills. You know also that if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. And you also know that you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, because I post the show notes and links diary from Daily Codes that gets posted 10 minutes before showtime, and you can find that on my Twitter feed at Justice Putnam. And you also know you can follow the show at Cookbook West and on Twitter. And you can also pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. So all of that out of the way, since we have been burning up so much time, let's get into this first offering, which is out of the Associated Press by Don Thompson. The last of 20 people in California who helped put hundreds of unqualified drivers on the nation's highways operating big commercial vehicles has been successfully prosecuted, federal officials said yesterday, Monday. Everyone charged in the long-running investigation was ultimately convicted and sentenced, except for one suspect who died before trial. They were variously convicted of bribing public officials, identity fraud, accessing computers without authorization, and conspiracies in cases that span the state from the Los Angeles area to near the Oregon border. Some accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes. They included employees at the California Department of Motor Vehicles who accepted bribes to record fake scores for applicants' written and driving tests, including some who could not pass the exams and others who had not even taken the tests. Class A commercial driver's licenses, like the ones involved in some of the bribes, are required to operate trucks, including 18-wheel cargo semi-trailers. They are more difficult to obtain than regular driver's licenses, and applicants must pass both a written test and a behind-the-wheel test that is offered at a limited number of DMV locations. Trucking school owners bribe the DMV employees to pass unqualified drivers. In all, prosecutors estimated that the employees issued hundreds of fraudulent commercial driver's license permits and licenses risking public safety. Among them was longtime DMV employee Shawana Denise Harris, age 52, of Phelan. She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison earlier this month for updating test scores for at least 185 commercial driver's license applicants. She and a colleague were usually paid at least $1,500 each time, or more than $277,000 in bribes. Federal prosecutors said when they first announced the investigation in 2015 that some employees were paid up to $5,000 for each driver in a scam that began as early as June of 2011. And investigators had linked up to 23 traffic accidents to the scam at the time, but thankfully with no fatalities. Gregory Yee of the Los Angeles Times brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Former Dodgers outfielder Yasiel Puig has agreed to plead guilty to lying to federal authorities investigating an illegal sports gambling ring, according to court documents unsealed yesterday, Monday. Puig, age 31, will plead guilty to one count of making false statements, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California said he has agreed to pay a fine of at least $55,000 and is set to make an initial court appearance today, Tuesday. Under the sentencing guidelines, he will be eligible for probation, and he looks forward to putting this behind him, said Kerry Axel, Puig's attorney. Federal authorities had been investigating an illegal sports gambling operation run by Wayne Nix, a former minor league baseball player who lives in Newport Beach. When Puig lied in interviews about his involvement, according to the plea agreement. In 2019, Puig began placing bets through a third party working for Nix and soon racked up debt of more than $280,000. After paying off part of the debt, Puig placed hundreds of bets on tennis, football, and basketball through websites connected to Nix's ring. The plea agreement did not specify whether Puig bet on baseball. The third party, a former collegiate baseball player and private coach referred to in court documents as Agent One, placed and accepted bets for Nix's business, whose client list included current and former professional athletes, the court documents said. Puig, who was traded from the Dodgers to the Cincinnati Reds in December of 2018 and from the Reds to the Cleveland Indians in July 2019, met Agent One at a youth baseball camp in January of 2019. Beginning no later than May of 2019, defendant began placing bets on sporting events with the Knicks gambling business through Agent One, the document said. Puig called and texted Agent One to place bets according to the plea agreement. After Agent One got Puig's wagers, Agent One submitted the bets to Knicks's bookmaking operation. Puig owed Knicks's business $282,000 by June 17th of that year. Another private coach who helped Puig with batting practice, referred in the plea agreement as Individual B, was working with Agent One to collect Puig's gambling debts. From June 25th to July 3rd, Agent One and Individual B sent texts to Puig telling him to make a check or wire transfer payable to another person known as Individual A, who was a client of Nix's business who was owed at least $200,000 as of June 2019, the plea agreement said. Puig withdrew $200,000 from a Bank of America branch in Glendale on June 25th. He took out two cashier's checks for $100,000 each that were payable to Individual A, but did not immediately send them due to a dispute, according to the documents. From June 28th to July 4th, Puig asked for direct access to gambling websites run by Sand Island Sports, which Nix and Agent One used to create accounts for clients to place bets. Nix refused, saying that he needed to pay his debts first. Puig sent the cashier's checks to Individual A on July 3rd, and Nix gave Puig direct access to the gambling websites the next day. Of the Washington Post brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Officials from 6 nations spent more than $750,000 at Trump's hotel in Washington, D.C., as they were trying to influence his administration, according to documents turned over to congressional investigators. The records obtained by the House Committee on Oversight and Reform from Mazars USA, Trump's former accounting firm, show that the governments of China, Malaysia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates spent more money at Trump International Hotel, renting rooms for up to $10,000 a night, than previously known, as they sought to influence the Trump administration's foreign policy. These documents sharply call into question the extent to which Trump was guided by his personal financial interest while in office other than the best interests of the American people, Representative Carolyn Maloney, chairman of the committee, said in a statement. These documents, which the committee continues to obtain from Mazars, will inform our legislative efforts to ensure that future presidents do not abuse their position of power for personal gain. Okay, why don't we go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Shayla Love. When you hear a bee buzzing along, visiting a flower, you're hearing the movement of air made by the fluttering of its wings. But it turns out that bees are buzzing in more than one way.
I first saw this when I saw a bumblebee land on an electrode I was using, and I saw a real change in the measurement. And I thought, this is a charged thing.
That's Giles Harrison, a professor of atmospheric physics at the University of Reading in England. He's co-author of a recent paper in iScience that measured the electric charge of swarms of bees and found that the insects can generate as much electricity as storm clouds.
We know for quite a long time already that bees carry an electric charge.
Ellard Hunting is a biologist at the University of Bristol in England, and he studies how different organisms use those electric fields in the environment. Plants and pollen tend to be negatively charged, and bees are positively charged.
The bee visits a flower, the pollen are actually electrostatically attracted to the bee, and so they stick better and they transfer better.
There are several honeybee hives that are used for research at the field station at the University of Bristol School of Veterinary Sciences. Those bees sometimes swarm, and that's when the researchers were able to directly measure from them using an electric field monitor. Bees can also electrically sense whether a flower has been visited by another bee who already took its nectar. But until now, it hadn't been considered that living things flying around in the atmosphere could make an impact with their own charges. Now, an individual bee's charge is minuscule. It takes a lot of bees to generate enough electricity to make an impact.
Imagine that you need like 1 billion of those to light up an LED.
50 million bees to get enough charge to start a car.
But altogether, because there are so many insects in the atmosphere, they can have a massive effect. This means that bees and other large groups of insects are capable of changing the atmospheric electric fields around them, potentially impacting things such as weather events, cloud formation, and dust dispersal. Insects are not the only living thing that spend time in the atmosphere. Birds and microorganisms carry charge too and take up space in the lower atmosphere. Even before the bees were measured, we knew that the sky was filled with electricity. These static electric fields are found everywhere in Earth's atmosphere, and they can be swayed by rain, lightning, aerosols, pollution, volcanoes, and possibly earthquakes. atmospheric electricity is measured as something called the vertical potential gradient, or PG, which is the difference in voltage between the surface of Earth and any point in the air. The team found that the swarms of bees could change the PG by 100 to 1,000 volts per meter. They also modeled how atmospheric electricity might be impacted by other insects, such as desert locusts, which can form swarms of up to 460 square miles. These swarms are dense enough to cram 40 million to 80 million of the insects into less than half a square mile. Based on past measurements of locust electrical charges, such swarms create more charge than reported for electrical storms. Not all insects pack such an electrical punch. In the modeling, moths and butterflies don't seem to have a big impact because of their relatively low densities. Right now, insects' electric charges aren't accounted for in climate models that look at complex interactions in the atmosphere. They probably should be. The combined electric charge of all of these insects might impact the development of rain, snow, and droplet formation, and maybe even how clouds are made.
We can only speculate, but that might have an impact on cloud formation. And if there's a direct link between insects and cloud formation, then we know that clouds are relevant to climate.
Insect electricity could also be influencing how dust moves around the atmosphere. This is something that atmospheric scientists are interested in because such dust cuts off incoming sunlight and can change temperature distributions locally.
The link between dust and insects is very interesting because one of the questions in climate change is how is it that large particles move from the Sahara? And we've just thought about it in terms of the physics of transporting them from the Sahara, and they're found a long way away. What if they're stuck to a locust because they're charged? That really changes things, and we can think about it very differently.
After learning about how much of a spark these insects can generate together, it may be time to start taking into account all that extra buzzing up in the air. For 60 Second Science, this is Shayla Love.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
This Civil Liberties Minute is about abortion and the midterms. I'm ACLU of Massachusetts attorney Bill Newman. In November, the right to abortion was on the ballot in 5 states. In 3, California, Michigan, and Vermont, voters were asked whether the right to reproductive choice should be enshrined in their state constitutions. And in all 3 states, again, California, Michigan, and Vermont, voters voted to include in their state constitutions the guarantee of reproductive choice, just as 60% of the voters in Kansas did last summer, just as the federal Constitution did before this Supreme Court reversed Roe. Also on the ballot in November in Kentucky and Montana were proposals to restrict or prohibit abortion, and in both of those states, the ban or restriction lost. In sum, for the midterm elections, 5 victories for reproductive choice, 5 wins, and no losses. But many states now prohibit abortion, or most abortions, and some politicians are pledging to enact a federal ban. And this Supreme Court will have a huge say in the future of the right that some states still protect or guarantee, the right of women, and not the government, to make their decisions on reproductive choice. In sum, the reversal of Roe remains a huge loss. But as the midterms show, fights for reproductive freedom can still be won. The struggle continues. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1881. That was the day that trade unionists held the founding convention of the Federation of Trades and Labor Unions in Pittsburgh. This group later changed its name to the American Federation of Labor. During the 1880s, it grew to replace the Knights of Labor as the most powerful labor union organization in the United States. The Federation of Trades and Labor Unions, and later the American Federation of Labor, were dedicated to the principles of craft unionism. Unions were organized by crafts, so workers with different jobs at the same workplace would belong to different unions. The Federation of Trades and Labor Unions focused on gaining collective bargaining rights, and with it, better wages, benefits, and working conditions for its members. The creation of this federation marked a turning point in workers' struggles to improve their working conditions. However, not all workers or labor leaders were supportive of the idea of craft unionism. For example, Eugene V. Debs started the American Railway Union because he did not think the specific craft railway unions were an effective way to build worker solidarity in the industry. He wanted a union of all railroad workers, as opposed to unions divided by job description. Nevertheless, the Federation of Trades and Labor Unions and the American Federation of Labor showed that workers could band together. By doing so, they could fight for a better standard of living and a better future for themselves and their families. The Federation of Trades and Labor Unions proclaimed that their goal was to organize a systematic agitation to propagate trades unions' principles, to elevate trades unionism, and to obtain for the working classes that respect for their rights and that reward for their services to which they are justly entitled. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, yes, and looks like there's foggy conditions up near the ridge where this particular local weather station is located. Part of the Weather Underground, by the way. But it is clearing up rather nicely here at the mothership. We'll expect partly cloudy skies, though it seems quite sunny at the moment. Highs near 60. Now, that's the weird thing. This is how people catch pneumonia. We got to keep track of this and be careful. Winds will be out of the east at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the upper 20s, low 30s. Winds light and variable. And then sunny tomorrow with highs in the low 60s. Oh, my gosh. Winds light and variable. Oh, yes, pollen is still rated as none here at the mothership in Rogue River, the town, the village itself. The air quality index for the Rogue River region is good at 30 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is in the low range, and it has ticked down to level 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.42 inches. Visibility is a little less than a mile, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 55 degrees and fair. Paris is 55 and cloudy. Rome is 62 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 43 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 38 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 73 and fair. Tokyo is 50 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 53 and clear. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and sunny. And New York, New York is 44 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The European Union warned Serbia and Kosovo that they are on the edge of a precipice and must resolve their dispute over vehicle license plates before next week, or face the prospect of a return to their violent past. Long-simmering tensions between Serbia and its former province mounted in recent weeks over the Kosovo government's decision to ban Serbia-issued license plates. On November 5th, 10 Serb lawmakers, 10 prosecutors, and 576 police officers in Kosovo's northern Mitrovica region resigned over the move. After the meeting with representatives of the political parties, Kosovar President Osmani set December 18th for holding snap elections for mayors in the four municipalities in the north, where posts were abandoned by ethnic Serb minority representatives. Osmani said she will ask for international election observers, adding that authorities will undertake all necessary measures in order that citizens, regardless of ethnicity, feel protected, safe, and carry out their constitutional rights. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said their resignations have left police stations and courts unstaffed, and that in this vacuum the worst can happen. So both parties need to show more flexibility.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Edith M. Lederer of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The UN General Assembly approved a resolution yesterday, Monday, calling for Russia to be held accountable for violating international law by invading Ukraine, and also including by paying reparations for widespread damage to the country and for Ukrainians killed and injured during the war. The vote in the 193-member world body was 94-14 with 73 abstentions. It was close to the lowest level of support received by any of the 5 Ukraine-related resolutions adopted by the General Assembly since Russia's February 24th invasion of its smaller neighbor. Russia's UN ambassador, Vasily Lebenzia, urged Assembly members to vote against the resolution, calling it an attempt to legalize something that, from the view of existing international law, cannot be legalized. It is legally null and void, he said. Lebenzia accused the West of doing everything it can to provide a veneer of legitimacy, to start spending frozen or actually stolen Russian assets amounting to billions of dollars. And he accused the West of seeking a General Assembly decision as a screen to hide this open robbery, whose beneficiaries will end up being the Western military organizations. Canada's UN ambassador, Robert Ray, shot back that the resolution makes no mention of forcibly seizing assets or destroying the powers of sovereign states, and said Russia is only making the allegations because it does not want to admit the resolution's call for an international register to document evidence of damage, loss, and injury. The Assembly is not being asked to perform a function as a judge or jury, he said, and Russian claims that this is some systematic Western plot to steal the assets of sovereign states is just complete balderdash. It is nonsense, and we have to have the courage to say it. And so he did. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.